essentially, it came out of my own experience. I used to be a Red Cross first aid trainer and actually experienced quite a traumatic accident. And then, well, the next week I was back in the training room, and suddenly everything that was theory before became really real to me. And certain things about the training became actually very triggering. And I could go as far as saying it might be post-traumatic stress. And unfortunately, I got to the point where I couldn't actually carry on delivering training, which was something I really loved before that accident. And it sort of got me thinking, there's not really a space where somebody can go to learn first aid in a way which is sort of designed not to be re-triggering or re-traumatizing at all. So I wanted to really create that space. So I guess the idea then of trauma-informed training came along. So part of what I want to do is around post-traumatic care, post-traumatic self-care. So um, after you've experienced a traumatic first aid incident, um, how do you get back to your normal day-to-day life without that affecting you too much? There's also quite a lot of things to sort of take into account during an emergency, that having a sort of awareness of trauma can actually help us to understand. So, for example, if you have a fight or a flight or even a sort of temporary freeze response during an emergency, I mean, that's actually quite normal. It's the emergency itself which is not normal. So it's sort of understanding first aid through that sort of traumatic viewpoint, really. And so trauma-informed training, I sort of split that into sort of two areas. So the first is trauma-enhanced first aid. So this is a quite specific intervention for someone who's experienced a traumatic accident or emergency. So it's sort of combining wellbeing activities with your first aid training, and also sort of a peer support model. So having lots of people with a similar experience around first aid on the same course, because peer support can be really beneficial in sort of recovery context. So we've got lots of other examples of where peer support has been used. So Alcohol Anonymous, veteran support group. So, it's quite a well-used model for sort
What?
of recovery.
Come here to the kitchen and
Could I
come
just
here.
ask everyone to pop themselves on mute? I'm getting a few sort of interruptions coming through. So there we go. Okay, so final sort of aspect of this sort of trauma enhanced training is psychoeducation. So learning about trauma, so learning to understand your response. So whether it's disassociation or whether you're hyper aroused, we'll be looking at some of these things later on in the talk. So it's understanding those things can actually help us in some ways become a better first aider, but also to understand our trauma response and put that into a sort of a normal context. So, it's a normal reaction. And I would be quite interested in researching whether this type of intervention could actually be effective to help people to sort of integrate their trauma into their lives and move past it. So I am hoping to work with some researchers to really get an evidence base, does this work for people as a way of overcoming or, well, a contributing factors to sort of getting over trauma. It's always going to be multiple things that are part of your recovery journey, not just, one course. It's not sort of a silver bullet. So final thing on here, trauma inform your training courses. So I'd like to do some work with first aid trainers. So just anyone who teaches first aid. It's really just about understanding perhaps some of your learners in the room. For them, it's not theory, it's actually real what you're talking about. And how can you deliver the training in a way which isn't actually going to sort of re-traumatize them. So yeah, looking at developing some guidance for first aiders and also including things like, signposting, sort of integrating mental health first aid into your sort of first aid course, really. So yeah, that's sort of the project, so where this sort of idea came out of for the webinar.